Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today during our Data Hub Cafecito teach-in. My name is Jennifer Najosa. I'm the Research Director at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies, and I have my colleague here, Damaira Figueroa. She's our research analyst and the creator of this fantastic dashboard that we will present to you today. So without any further ado, we will go ahead and log in. Share my screen. So our dashboard is called Socio-Demographic Data of the Puerto Ricans in the US and Puerto Rico between 2010 to 2019. Our presentation will be as follows, where we're going to present the core features of this dashboard. We'll discuss a bit about the data sources and variables included in the dashboard, and then we'll have a breakdown of the actual product. Then we'll look into the types of analysis that you can do and the capabilities. Then we'll discuss about the data download. And then lastly, we'll finish with the case study looking at healthcare coverage and rent burden amongst the stateside Puerto Ricans. So what is the purpose of our dashboard? The purpose of our dashboard is to provide accessible data, make better decision making, and have an interactive experience with the data. Interactive experience meaning you could compare data across geographies and across years, and we'll sort of dive into that in a bit. The data sources that we use is from the US Census Bureau's American Community Survey, from specifically the 1-year estimates, and we included the table ID here. And then what we also included was the 13 most Puerto Rican populated states, which includes California, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, and finally Virginia. And the reason why we've included these 13 states is because the census data provides a population profile, which is available. And what that includes is different social, economic, and demographic data specifically for the Puerto Rican population in those states. And the requirement is to have at least 100,000 people or more within this particular state to have an overview of a population profile, right? We've also included Puerto Rico as for comparison purposes, right? So if you want to compare California to Puerto Rico or Florida to Puerto Rico, you can do that with our dashboard. We've also included IPUMS data, which is a micro data set from the Census Bureau, but we use PUMS data specifically to include migration data. So looking at in and out migration of Puerto Ricans from Puerto Rico to the 13 states and vice versa. So we could see in and out migration. More importantly, this dashboard, we're gonna update this annually. So I'm not too sure if you know, but the census did not include, I think they skipped over 2020 ACS 1-year estimates. So the next one is going to be 2021. So once that data is released, we will include that in our dashboard. So just a footnote, we're going to update this annually. Okay, so our dashboard, let me just minimize this. So our dashboard includes the following. So we have 6 different tabs. And the following tabs include demographic data, which includes total population in the state, migration, which includes in and out migration, and age and sex. Health tab includes healthcare coverage and disability data. Work includes employment status and the type of occupation. Income and poverty includes income such as SSI, medium household income, and poverty status. Housing includes housing tenure, whether your owners are renters, monthly costs, and other selected characteristics. And lastly, education and language, such as educational attainment and language proficiency. So just keep that in mind. Now here's the actual dashboard itself right here. And I want to include break it down for you so that you can sort of navigate the dashboard. oops. Okay. So I want to focus on the top part, which is the variable selection. So basically what we just discussed in the previous slide, whoops, right here in these gray boxes are included here on the top. So you have the variable selection. You can select your geography. So you can select the 13 states. You can select 2, 1, however you see fit. And we have the years here. So remember, since we're updating this annually, right, we will include the 2021 data when it's released. But for now, we have 2010 to 2019. So here you go. And then at the bottom here, this is where you will you could share or download your data. Now I want to focus on your attention on these two boxes in particular. So box 1 is going to have your data display. So whatever you select, such as age or sex, work, right, and the state or the year, that will get displayed in the box 1. Box 2 is defaulted for the percent change between 2010 to 2019. So here we have the map right here and the graphic here. So what we're looking at right now is the population tab. So right now we're just looking at pure population numbers and population over time of the Puerto Rican population in all states. And more importantly, at the bottom of our dashboard, you will see the notes and sources. So if you plan on using the data, you will have the sourcing note at the bottom. Then we're going to move on to the type of analysis that you can do. So in this dashboard, you can look at maps, graphics, and charts that can depict population growth and socioeconomic characteristic trends since 2010. You can compare across geographies. You can also compare across years. So if you are particularly interested between the change between 2010 to 2017, or you want to look at post-Hurricane Maria, perhaps socio-demographic changes in these 13 states, you're able to do so. But more importantly, you're able to look at change between 2010 to 2019. So you don't have to go download the data into Excel and then calculate the change. It's already done for you. So if we take a look at this, let me move this here, sorry, health coverage window. So remember I discussed box 1. So here we have box number 1. And the default, right, is always going to be stateside Puerto Ricans and Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, right? But you could change that. So for this particular data selection right here, we're looking at healthcare coverage related comparison between stateside Puerto Ricans and Puerto Rico. And at the bottom, you'll see the percent change, okay? In terms of the data download, you'd be able to download the data as an image, as a CSV or Excel file, as a crosstab PDF, or if you want to include the image into your PowerPoint presentation, you'd be able to do so. And lastly, you can download this as a Tableau workbook. So now let's look into a case study. So for example, if you are going to be working on perhaps a study related to healthcare coverage amongst the stateside Puerto Ricans, just to provide you some context, since the Affordable Care Act was released, uninsured rates declined, especially amongst the Latino population in the US. So maybe a question that you may have in mind is, well, what is the rate of uninsured Puerto Ricans in the Northeast? Has it increased or decreased since 2010? So the Affordable Care Act, I believe it was enforced in 2014. So just keep that in mind. And the Maida is going to give us a live demo.
Everyone, all right. So here is the dashboard. Somebody had asked in the Q&A where you can find it, and I provided the link in that box. So here is that page. So to answer the question, we're going to go to housing.
Sorry, it's healthcare, Damaida.
Oh, sorry, healthcare. For the health insurance coverage, we are going to focus on the Northeast. So you can select the geography right here. We're gonna deselect Puerto Rico. We're gonna select Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. So you can view all the years here, but what we're gonna do is only select year 2010 and 2019. So here you can compare 2010 to 2019 within the US, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York. And as you can see here, the bottom, again, the first box displays the data display, and the second one, the percentage change between 2010 and 2019. So here, for those who are not covered by health insurance, you see between the Northeast that New York has the highest decline of those with no healthcare coverage of Puerto Ricans. And then second would be Connecticut. For those looking, if you wish to see those with private coverage, yeah, you could view it here also within the percentage change. So here you see New Jersey has the highest increase of Puerto Ricans with private coverage between 2010 and 2019.
So with this live demo, if I wanted to download the image, the dashboard image as a image or a PowerPoint slide, you'd be able to do so. And this is what the end product will look like. So as Damaida was explaining here, for the health insurance coverage, we have those with private coverage, with public coverage, and with no health coverage between 2010 to 2019. And we selected states from the Northeast, right? Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York. And here we're able to see the change. So if we look at private coverage, we see that there was an increase, right, among stateside Puerto Ricans in New Jersey, right? Actually across all the Northeast states, but the highest has been for New Jersey. Those with public health insurance coverage, there was also an increase, the highest in Connecticut. We see a slight decline amongst stateside Puerto Ricans in Massachusetts, no change in New Jersey, and a slight increase amongst stateside those Puerto Ricans in New York. Now, with no health insurance coverage or those without uninsured, right, we see that there was also a decline, but the highest decline was seen in New York. Now let's look at another case study. Perhaps you're interested in rent burden comparison in Northeast. So rent burden, what that means is households that pay 30% or more of their income towards housing, right? In this case, towards rent. So they may have difficulty affording food, clothing, transportation, or medical care. And according to the Joint Center for Housing Studies, Black and Hispanic renters face the greatest threat of eviction during the pandemic. So if we were interested in this, and again, the latest data that we have, that census has available is 2019. So if we want to look at pre-pandemic numbers, we'd be able to do so. So perhaps a question you have in mind is, what does rent burden look like amongst Northeast Puerto Ricans? Has it declined or increased between 2010 to 2019? So take it over, Damaida.
Sorry. So we're going to go back to the dashboard. Here we're going to go now to housing. So here you have 3 subcategories, those who are owner and renters, monthly costs, and also other selected characteristics. To answer this question, we're going to go over in terms of renter income burden, we're going to go over to monthly costs. So again, the first box is the data display, and the second, the percentage change. We're going to go over and deselect Puerto Rico and select only the northeastern states, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York, along with the United States. Again, we want to focus on 2010 and 2019, but you are able to select all years from 2010 to 2019. So we're going to deselect, choose 2010, 2019. And these, again, the box filters only the top part and not the bottom part because it's only focused on 2010 and 2019. So here you can view in 2010, Puerto Ricans in the US, they were paying 30% or more of their household income to their monthly costs, their housing monthly costs. It was 48.5%, but then it decreased to 33.4% in 2019. So you can see within the owners, the homeowners, that there's more of a decrease going on between 2010 and 2019, but amongst renters, the decrease is a lot smaller. If we're viewing the percentage change, you can see the decrease across all states for Puerto Ricans, but from homeowners, the largest would be in Connecticut, and for renters, again, the largest would be in Connecticut. If you wish to download this, you would click at the bottom, the arrow, and then you can select, again, like Jennifer said, image, data, crosstab, PDF, PowerPoint, or tablet workbook. So if you wanted the data, an image will pop up and you would have the data available here. You close the window and it should take you back.
Damara, can you give us a demo of if you were, so say for example, you're doing a project related to this and you want to include this data to your PowerPoint. Can you show us like
yes,
how to do that?
So again, just go to the bottom of the dashboard amongst the farthest right side. You hover over and it'll show download, click PowerPoint. And you can select this view or specific sheets from the dashboard or from this workbook by itself. So for example, if we just want this view, we're going to click with this view and download, and the PowerPoint should pop up. It should be downloaded and it might take a minute. But yes, it should be able to. And so you have the title, and then when the file was created, and then the image shall pop up.
I don't think we could see the PowerPoint, sorry.
I'm sorry. Let me. Are you able to view it now?
Oh yeah, no.
Okay, so here is the title when the file was created, and then this image will pop up in your PowerPoint.
So the analysis that was done by the MIDA, if you wanted to sort of copy and paste that, you can do so by just downloading the data as an image, and it'll pop it up as a PowerPoint. Okay. And the MIDA, can you go back to the dashboard? Sorry.
Of course.
Okay. So say, for example, you want to look at perhaps post-Maria. So again, this is not specifically post-Maria migrants, but if you want to look at change, right, between, let's say, well, 2017, I would look into 2018 and 2019 to see if there was any changes amongst, like, say, rent burden amongst Northeast stateside Puerto Ricans. Has it increased since, post-Maria? So if you look at Connecticut right here, so the MIDA included 2017. Can you do that again? Sorry, the MIDA.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and she deselected 2010, and we want to look at post-Maria, right? So let's she selected 2017, 2018. Can you also include 2016?
Of course.
Yeah, let's just do 1 year before Maria. Okay, so here what we see, perhaps there was not much change, although with Massachusetts, there was a slight increase of rent burden between 2018 to 2019, right? For New Jersey, there was a decline. New York, there was a slight, was it increase?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are the type of analysis that you're able to do, right? So if you're not, you just don't want to look at like 2010, you could also include other years as well. But the default for the percent change is always going to be from 2010 to 2019. Okay. Let's go to my slide. Now, so with this, demo, what we saw here was so again, the data display is always box number 1. And here we have, just looking at 2019, we see that with New York, so if we could compare stateside Puerto Ricans overall in the US relative to Puerto Ricans in Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, we see that New York has the highest of those with their rent burden. That's about more than half, that's like 58%, followed by the overall, stateside Puerto Ricans, which is 56.3. Connecticut and Massachusetts are the same with 56.8, and New Jersey is about 53.7 in terms of Puerto Ricans experiencing rent burden. Now, in terms of percent change, right, we see that the highest decline was seen amongst Puerto Ricans in Connecticut, with a decline of 16.8% between 2010 and 2019, followed by New Jersey, Massachusetts. Stateside Puerto Ricans overall was decline of 7.2, but we see the lowest decline amongst Puerto Ricans in New York. So again, the point of this dashboard is to provide accessible data. You're able to also look at this dashboard, right, on your tablets, on your phones, right, perhaps making better decision-making, right, and to have an interactive experience. So you don't have to be this, highly skilled statistician. This is a readily available data, and you could download it as a PowerPoint, as a CSV file. And then lastly, the Midas, so she was the one that created this dashboard. So it was, an amazing experience. It took us a while, but we got there. And then we have some forthcoming products where you're able to compare stateside Puerto Rican and to other racial and ethnic groups as well. And that's it. So thank you so much. Here is our email. So if you have any email or any questions, feel free to email us. And then I think we could take some questions since we ended a bit early. So I'm going over the chat box. So Ron Leonard said, could you get data on utility burden for those same renters in New York because of major utility? Sorry. So with that question, I don't think we're able to get that through the American Community Survey from the census, like the population profiles, but I'm pretty sure we could perhaps get that using IPRUM's data. So yeah, but if you're interested in that, Ron, just shoot us an email and we could definitely send that data over to you. And again, we didn't want to bog you down on all these numbers. We just wanted to make sure. Oh, here we have another question. Anything registered voters or car owners? So we were thinking about including CVAP, citizen voting age population. So that might be a tab that we may want to include for this dashboard.
Yeah.
So that's a good idea. So we should add that. And then also, like, even though this is at the state level, forthcoming dashboard is looking at counties. So that's going to be another major project, Amida. But it's, even though this is at state level, you're able to, when you start looking at the lower level geographies, then you could get a sense of any, disparities. Will you eventually add other data sets? For now, we just want to keep it consistent, which is using the census data set, specifically the American Community Survey. But if there's any other data sets that you have in mind, feel free to let us know. But for now, we're just going to keep it as the ACS one-year estimates and the IPLUMS data to look at in-migration and out-migration. Actually, can you give us a demo on that, Damaida? So Damaida is going to sort of do a demo of in and out migration from Puerto Rico to a specific state and vice versa. So looking at Puerto Rico to New York, right? And then you could also look at New York to Puerto Rico. Can you share your screen?
So go to the migration tab.
Yeah.
And so here you have available out migration, in migration, and net migration. So for right now, the showing is of out migration from Puerto Rico. So there's a table on the side. This is showing for 2019. If, for example, you want to show 2018, the year after Hurricane Maria, just filter it and it will change the data. So if you're looking at the table, for example, going back to what Jennifer said, looking at New York, if you wanted to just look at, we have all these states available. If on the map, if it's grayed out, that means data was not available for these certain states. For example, in 2018, it would be Wyoming and Montana. But going back, if we wanted to just look at, let's say, New York, New Jersey,
Connecticut. Connecticut was another one of those states that received a lot of post-Maria evacuees.
Connecticut. Would you also like to do Florida, or?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, Florida is the largest, contains the largest Puerto Rican population.
So here it will filter out to just these states. You can zoom in if you wish on these, on the side, zoom in or zoom out. And then for the house signifies just, it goes back to its regular default. So here you have on the table out migration. So in 2018, 3,636 Puerto Ricans left Puerto Rico to Connecticut. 34,000 left from Puerto Rico to Florida, and New York is 6,000 in migration. So meaning people fleeing from New York, leaving from New York to Puerto Rico. 2,000 left New York to Puerto Rico in 2018. 4,000, about 5,000 left Florida to Puerto Rico, and then you have the net migration, which in Florida is relatively high. So yeah, it's like negative 29,000. You also have overtime. So you can see for Florida, which is purple, the legend is below, that the increase of like the spike that happens in 2018, especially for Florida. But you can see throughout the years where Florida has been the main state, at least for these northeast and eastern states, where more than 20,000 have been leaving Puerto Rico to Florida from 2013 to 2018, and then downward decrease to in 2019 to just 12,000.
And then also, like, again, if you want to download this information, you're able to do so, and you're able to share this via social media. Can we go to the population tab? So here's just general information about population numbers of Puerto Ricans in all the states. And as you can see here, we have all the states included here between 2010 to 2019. So again, if you are interested, can you select a geography for Puerto Rico and maybe Florida? Actually, Puerto Rico and US, sorry. So as you can see in this graphic right here, right, we see again, was it green? The dark green represents stateside Puerto Ricans, and the light green represents Puerto Rico, population Puerto Rico. So we can see here, here's an example of, you know, if you want to look at, well, what does the population look like in stateside Puerto Ricans and in Puerto Rico, you can see stateside Puerto Ricans are growing, right? Whereas we, you know, this is nothing new. Population has been declining in Puerto Rico, but you see that gap just like widening, right, over the years. And again, you could download this as well. Someone was asking about labor force participation rates. Can we do a demo of, was it work? And let's compare stateside Puerto Ricans and Puerto Rico.
Do you want all years or just?
We could just choose 2010 and 2019. And let's select US and PR.
Okay.
A little off. But here's the type of information that we have. We have those that are in the labor force, employed, unemployed, we have unemployment rate. And as you can see, wow, stateside Puerto Ricans, unemployment rate is 6.3%, whereas in Puerto Rico, it's 14%. And this is just looking at 2019, not in the labor force. We see that stateside Puerto Ricans in 2019 was about 36%, and in Puerto Rico, it is 55.4%. It's a huge difference. And then here you can see, we could look at the percent change between 2010 to 2019. So you can see here across all variables, we see that employment has declined, right, in Puerto Rico, but employment has increased, but this is interesting. Yeah, employment has increased in among stateside Puerto Ricans. But you definitely see, you know, day and night differences between Puerto Rico and stateside Puerto Ricans. Can we look at perhaps, let's look at housing. And again, another forthcoming product is we're going to be creating data sheets, sort of describing the, you know, each tab. So we're going to have a data sheet related to migration, age and sex, health, and then comparing across the 13 populated states, Puerto Rican population and Puerto Rico. So if we look at this, can we just have stateside Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico?
Would you like all years?
Yeah, I could just leave it like that, yeah. So here we have stateside Puerto Ricans. We see, can you scroll down just a little? Yeah. Ownership, homeowners has increased between 2010 to 2019 among stateside Puerto Ricans, just about 4.5%. Renters have slightly declined by 2.7%. And for Puerto Ricans, this is very interesting here. In terms of housing tenure, homeownership rate has declined, well, by 2.7%, but renters has increased by 6.6%. And we definitely see that change starting post 2017 for Puerto Rico. Let's look at another variable. Maybe let's look at age and sex. So yeah, let's select, yeah, that's fine, Puerto Rico and stateside. And let's select 2010 to 2019. Okay. So as you can see here, age is broken down by 4 groups: under 18, 18 to 34, 35 to 64, and then the 65 years and over age group. So very interesting. Can you scroll down to the percent change? So here we go. We see that all the categories of the age group has increased for stateside Puerto Ricans. But look at this, if we look at Puerto Rico, the under 18 years old age group has declined by about 37% between 2010 to 2019. That's super high. But the opposite happened for the 65 year and over age group. So 65 years and over has increased almost about 24%. So we definitely see on the state side, right, Puerto Ricans are aging here. But there's definitely a huge difference between stateside Puerto Ricans and Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico. And I think, does anyone else have any, you guys want to look at something specific? Let me see here. I'm going back to the Q&A. So we answered this question. Will this database open up to international locations? For now, no, but if anyone else wants to, adapt this sort of layout, you're more than welcome to do so. But we specifically did use ACS, American Community Survey 1-year estimates. So we did the labor force participation. So we did that. If anyone else has an interest in a particular tab, we still have time. No. Trying to think of something else. Maybe let's look at work. And we have a breakdown by occupation. So we have employment status and we have occupation. So here we have management and business, natural resources, production and transportation, sales and office, and lastly, services. And if you scroll down, so here we have among stateside Puerto Ricans, management, business, natural resources, production, transportation has increased, whereas sales and office has declined, and service occupations declined as well. And we see somewhat the opposite for Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico. So sales has declined and service occupations declined in Puerto Rico, whereas management and business sciences has increased in Puerto Rico. So yeah, if you guys have any other questions, you have our email in that last slide. Can we switch over to my slide? Any feedback is great as well. If you guys have any feedback or any other data variable that we're missing, just email us. But yeah, so instead of because we do get a lot of data requests, now you could just sort of go straight to the dashboard and download the data that you need. And we've included the past 9 years, and as soon as the 2021 data is released, we'll definitely include that into our dashboard. But again, any suggestions, please let us know. If you have any questions, or if you want to do sort of one-to-one, we could guide you through the dashboard as well. And I think we have the link right in the chat box, Amaida. Oh wait, is there any data on religion that you could get? No, that's very difficult to get, but if you have, I think there's one data source, but they don't split it up by Hispanic subpopulation group. But if you email me, I could definitely, I don't remember the name of that data source on top of my head, but if you email me, I could definitely let you know. But I do know that they don't have that data by Hispanic subpopulation group. Oh, someone wants to explore language use in education. Oh, okay. Let's do that.
Language. So in terms of language, was there a certain geography
No, she just, or he, could we explore language use in education? So let's look at language use among stateside Puerto Ricans. So we can leave it at that. So the categories here for language spoken at home or ability to speak English, we have English only, language other than English, and then speak English less than very well. So again, this is straight from the census. Can you scroll down just a tad bit to look at? So it looks like English only has increased by 15% between 2010 to 2019. Language other than English has declined, as well as speaks English less than very well has declined. And I think, what was the other question? Education. So this is education attainment of, okay. Now let's look at 2010 and 2019. So less than high school education has declined among stateside Puerto Ricans. Those with high school graduate GED
Have increased.
somewhat remain the same. Some college or associate has slightly increased as well from 28.5 to 30%. Those with a bachelor degrees or higher has increased for stateside Puerto Ricans from 16% to 20%. And here's something interesting. There's also a breakdown amongst females and males. So among stateside female Puerto Ricans, bachelor's degree or higher increased. Those with males with a BA or higher has also increased. But you could get those actual percent changes here in box number 2. Now we look at Puerto Ricans. In Puerto Rico, less than high school education declined, right, from 30% in 2010 to 21%. But everything else has increased, such as high school education, some college, bachelor degrees or higher. But this is interesting here. Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico tend to have, those with a bachelor degrees or higher is higher amongst Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico than stateside Puerto Ricans. So stateside Puerto Ricans, it was 20.3% of those with bachelor degrees or higher, but in Puerto Rico, it's 27%. Oh, wow. And also here amongst females and males, bachelor's degrees are higher. It's female Puerto Ricans, stateside Puerto Rican females, it's about 22.7%, but females in Puerto Rico, it's about 31.4% with those with the bachelor degrees are higher. So these are the type of analysis that you're able to do. It's easily accessible, right? You could just do it on the fly and everything is all in one spot. Let's see, oops. Could we, okay, so we did this. Oh, so census only measures use of English, not use of Spanish. We could, I think there might be a variable that includes Spanish. We could take a look into that and maybe we could definitely include that into our dashboard. We just need to see if that is available, which it should be in the census. So yeah, so Demira put the link to the dashboard. Feel free to play around with it. Any type of comments, suggestions, you have our email. Definitely, shoot us an email, and anything else, just let us know. If there's a specific data set that you want to look into, feel free to email us. So I think we'll wrap it up right here. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you like this product. And definitely we're gonna update it annually, and any other suggestions, feel free to email us. Thank you.
Thank you.